I knew something was off the second I saw a silver Lexus parked halfway across my lawn. It was early Saturday morning. I was sipping coffee on the porch when I noticed tire tracks carved deep into my grass. That wasn't unusual until 3 more cars rolled in like they owned the place, parking diagonally as if my yard had a valet. I'm Preston Naylor. I bought this house 3 years ago at the edge of Ridgeview Estates. It was a fixer-upper with charm, but the real reason I bought it. The long, private road that snakes up the hill about a quarter mile is actually part of my property. It's the only paved access to the rest of the neighborhood, and technically, it's an easement road. I let the HOA use it out of kindness and a signed agreement, but that kindness has limits. And apparently, so does their intelligence. Excuse me. A shrill voice shouted from behind a white Range Rover now idling in the middle of my flower bed. You can't block the community parking lot like that. I turned around, and there she was, Karen incarnate. Platinum bob, oversized sunglasses, clipboard in hand classic. Her real name was Deborah Whitmore, HOA president and self-declared queen of Ridgeview. I raised an eyebrow. Community parking lot, that's my yard. She flared her nostrils. Well, it's being used for the Ridgeview Spring Social today. You were sent an email. I don't check HOA emails. They're spam with better formatting. Deborah stepped closer like her stiletto heels gave her authority. Preston, you're being unreasonable. This is for the community. I looked at the dozens of folding chairs and tables being unloaded from a U-Haul and dropped right onto my front lawn like it was a public park. One guy even brought a bounce house and started inflating it near my garage. You didn't ask. You didn't get permission. You just decided to turn my yard into your party lot, she scoffed. You live on HOA property, Preston. No, I live on my property, and the HOA uses my road because I let them. Don't confuse the two. She waved her clipboard like it was a badge. No need to get defensive. It's just for a few hours. We'll clean up after. That's when a kid sprinted across my porch with muddy shoes, knocking over my coffee. His mom didn't even look up from her phone. I took a deep breath. Deborah, get these cars off my lawn, now. You're being selfish, she snapped. This is why people don't like dealing with off-grid types. You're not a team player, I chuckled. You're right, I'm not a team player. I'm the guy who owns the field you're playing on. She blinked, confused. I suggest you move the party. Because when those cars try to leave tonight, they'll find a locked gate and a very long walk home. Her eyes narrowed. You wouldn't dare. I absolutely would. She stormed off, muttering something about calling the sheriff. I let her go. She clearly didn't remember the easement agreement she signed when she became HOA president. It stated that access to the road could be revoked with written notice and a 10-day window unless there was property damage or misuse, which there now was. I went inside, pulled out the paperwork, and started drafting the notice. By the time the bounce house was fully inflated, the clock had already started ticking on Ridgeview's free ride. By late afternoon, the hill was crawling with Ridgeview residents like ants at a picnic. SUVs and golf carts lined both sides of the easement road. Some even parked halfway into the ditch like they'd run out of creativity. The party was in full swing, loud music, the smell of barbecue, and a rented DJ booth now stationed on my side yard. Someone had hauled in a generator and the cords slithered across my gravel walkway like vines. I didn't step outside again. Not yet. I had work to do. The original easement agreement signed 6 years ago had very specific language. It allowed residents to pass through the road, nothing more. No congregating, no commercial use, no temporary structures, and certainly no events. I had it scanned, emailed, and sent to my attorney, Marissa, who called me within 20 minutes. You've got them cold, she said. If they're using your land for anything beyond access, it's trespass. If there's damage, it's worse. Can I revoke the easement immediately? She paused. If you can document misuse, yes. The clause you included gives you the right to accelerate termination if the property is exploited in ways that obstruct your own use or cause harm. But you'll need proof. I've got cameras, 4 of them, one on the mailbox post, another near the garage, 2 on the driveway trees. Perfect. Gather footage, document physical damage. And for the love of due process, don't confront them again until we're ready to file. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Anything else, actually, check your property tax records. She sounded annoyed now. If they're using your land like this, it's possible they've been reporting it as common area in their HOA filings. That's misrepresentation, or worse. That lit a different kind of fire under me. I logged into the county assessor's site and pulled every public filing from Ridgeview Estates HOA for the past 5 years. Scrolling through the PDFs, my gut twisted when I found it. A schematic labeled Community Access Road and Shared Green Space, with a dotted overlay across my entire front lot. They'd submitted it as part of a zoning variance for a community center proposal 2 years ago, one that never got approved. But the document was still there, filed with the city. They'd claimed my land was part of the HOA's shared space. My phone buzzed. Another call from Marissa. I was right, she said without greeting. They've been using a redrawn parcel map in their annual disclosures, the one you just found. It's not valid, it was never approved, but they've been using it to justify budget allocations and event planning. Is that fraud? Close. It's definitely misappropriation. And if they collected dues based on that false map, it could be criminal. I'll contact the county clerk and have the original parcel boundaries certified again. In the meantime, start photographing everything. I grabbed my DSLR and stepped outside, walking the perimeter like I was documenting a crime scene. Trash littered the grass. One tire had torn a trench through the sod, and someone had attempted to cover it with a decorative rug from the party. The generator was leaking oil near my hostas. Preston, a voice called out. I turned. A man in a blue polo approached, holding a paper plate stacked with chicken skewers. Frank Weller, he said, offering a hand. Vice president of the HOA, I didn't take it. I just wanted to say thanks for letting us use the space today. It's really brought the community together. Did you know this space doesn't belong to the HOA? I asked. He frowned. Pardon? This is private land. You're on it. The entire party is on it. His eyes shifted to the tables, the decorations, the bounce house. Well, Deborah said Deborah doesn't own it. I do. And the HOA has no rights here beyond the marked road, which you've all violated. He cleared his throat. I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding. Let me talk to her. Do that. And let her know the easement agreement is being revoked, effective as soon as the paperwork is delivered. Frank's composure dissolved. Wait, you can't do that. That's the only access into Ridgeview. You'd trap hundreds of residents. No, I'll be notifying the city and providing temporary access to emergency services and deliveries. But the HOA, they'll need to renegotiate, and this time it won't be free. He backed away, muttering under his breath, and jogged toward the DJ booth. I watched from the porch as the mood of the party shifted. Within minutes, Deborah reappeared, walking fast, lips tight like she was chewing glass. You can't do this, she said, stopping at the bottom of my steps. You already did, I'm just responding. There are children here, families. You'd cut them off from their homes. No, I'll give them access, but you're done making decisions involving my property. You used a fraudulent map to justify this event, and you knew exactly what you were doing. That map was submitted in good faith. You mean the one that shows my land as a shared green space, the one attached to a zoning request your board members still reference in HOA emails? She froze. I could almost hear the gears in her head grinding to a halt. I've already sent everything to my attorney, I continued, and tomorrow I'm filing a formal trespass complaint. I'll also be contacting the city for a cease and desist against the HOA's use of misleading documents. She laughed, but it wasn't confident. You think the city cares about your little grudge? I think the city cares when someone files false documents to misappropriate private land. Especially when that landowner has documented proof timestamps, and a signed easement agreement that was violated in broad daylight. Her face lost its color. "Pack up your party, Deborah. You've got 36 hours before the gate gets closed and locked. After that, any vehicle parked here will be towed, at your expense." She didn't respond, just turned and walked away, her heels stabbing little holes into my already ruined lawn. I went back inside and uploaded the footage from the cameras. One feed caught someone dragging a grill across the gravel path. Another showed a man emptying a cooler right into my flower bed. And then there was the exact moment Deborah directed the DJ to set up on my side of the property clear as day, with her pointing and nodding. That evening, I filed the trespass complaint with the sheriff's office. The deputy I spoke to was surprisingly helpful. "Got your footage?" he asked. "4 angles. Good, send it over. If they used your land without permission and caused damage, that's criminal trespass. We can have a deputy present when you post the termination notice." I agreed and set the meeting for Monday morning. By dusk, the party had deflated like the bounce house. Half the residents had already packed up and left, word spreading like wildfire. I sat on the porch again, this time with a different mug in hand and a document folder at my feet. The gate stayed open for now. But not for long. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp quiet that made the chaos from 2 days ago feel like a fever dream. But the tire ruts, oil stains, and flattened flower beds were still there, more than enough to remind me it had been real. And I wasn't the only one who noticed. At precisely 9 o'clock, Deputy Callahan pulled up in a county cruiser, stepped out, and gave me a nod. He wore mirrored sunglasses and a clipboard was tucked under his arm. Behind him, a beige city truck rolled to a stop, and a lean man with a rolled-up blueprint under his arm stepped out. That was Ben Keller, from the county zoning office, a no-nonsense type who didn't ask for coffee or small talk. "You have the notice ready?" Callahan asked. I handed it over. A single-page declaration, typed and signed, revoking the easement effective immediately based on Clause 7, Section 4, misuse resulting in property damage. I'd included time-stamped photos, printed stills from the cameras, and a list of damages. Ben whistled low when he saw the comparison between the original plat map and the one the HOA had filed. "Where'd this come from?" he asked, tapping the altered one with a pen. "Submitted during a variance request 2 years ago. They never got approval, but they've been using it anyway," he shook his head. "They drew parcel lines over property they don't own, correct? That's municipal fraud." Callahan looked over his sunglasses. "You want to press charges?" "Absolutely," Ben nodded. "I'll start the audit. This is going to get ugly." They followed me down the gravel path to where the gate sat open across the easement road. I unlatched the side panel and flipped the bolt on the main lock. Callahan posted the notice on the gate with his clipboard, while Ben hammered a temporary zoning violation sign into the ground beside it. We stood there for a moment, watching a few early commuters from Ridgeview slow down at the site. A silver sedan crept to a stop, the driver's eyes wide as she read the notice. Callahan stepped forward and waved her through, explaining the temporary access for the next 24 hours. After that, it would require written permission and a new agreement. As the car rolled away, Ben turned to me. "What's your end game here?" "Accountability," I said. "And I want them to feel what it's like to lose control over something they thought they owned." He nodded once, then walked back to his truck. Callahan stayed behind for another hour, making sure the posted notice was respected. By noon, a line of confused residents had formed at the gate, all of them reading the sign and backing up slowly. No one tried to argue. That changed around 2 o'clock. A black SUV with tinted windows pulled up fast, kicking dust up behind it. The driver's door swung open and Deborah stepped out in a tailored navy blazer and low heels, clearly dressed for war. She held a manila folder and marched straight up to me. "This is harassment," she said without preamble. "You've taken this too far." "You submitted a fraudulent map to the city," I said. That's not a mistake, that's a crime, her jaw twitched. We had guidance, our board approved it. Your board doesn't own this land, you never even asked. She thrust the folder into my hands. This is a petition. Over 100 residents signed it. They demand continued access. I didn't even open it. This isn't a democracy, it's my deed. You don't vote on property rights. We've contacted an attorney, she said, voice rising. And if you don't reverse this revocation, we'll sue for obstruction of community access. You're welcome to try. But you'd be suing the person who owns the only road into your neighborhood. You really want to put that on record. She faltered for half a second, then recovered. We'll claim historical use, implied easement. You allowed access for years. And I documented every single day of it, including the signed agreement that makes clear it was revocable. You violated its terms. That ended the deal. It's done. She stared at me for a long moment, trying to read something in my face. Then she turned to Callahan. Do you have any idea what kind of disruption this is causing? He didn't flinch. Ma'am, your organization misrepresented property lines to the municipal zoning board. That's a felony under state code. You need to direct your concerns to your legal counsel. She looked ready to explode, but before she could, a second vehicle pulled up behind hers. This one was an unmarked black sedan with government plates. A man and a woman stepped out, both in dark suits, both carrying leather binders. One flashed a badge. State Attorney's Office. You Preston Naylor? The man asked. Yes. I'm Assistant DA Marcus Bell. This is Investigator Patel. We're here about the zoning fraud complaint. You filed evidence? I led them inside and handed over the folder I'd prepared in advance. Maps, emails, screenshots, and the original plat certification from the county office. Patel flipped through it while Bell scanned the altered map. This was submitted to secure budget approvals, he asked. Yes. They used it to justify event expenses, maintenance fees, and even an insurance policy for the so-called shared green space, which is my lawn. Bell nodded slowly. That's wire fraud, misuse of public records, and potentially insurance fraud. You'll be hearing from us. They left without another word, driving straight to the HOA's office on the other side of the hill. By evening, word had spread. I watched from my porch as residents gathered at the gate, some trying to reason with each other, others clearly angry. But for the first time, none of them looked at me like the villain. In fact, a few waved hesitant but respectful. They knew something had shifted. The next morning, it got worse for the HOA. A city truck arrived and blocked the main HOA clubhouse entrance. Officials began inspecting the grounds, taking measurements. 2 officers accompanied them. Then a red tag was placed on the clubhouse door, property under investigation. By noon, Deborah had vanished. No one saw her leave, but a board member named Leonard was suddenly in charge. He showed up at my gate, out of breath and pale. Mr. Naylor, he said, wringing his hands. We'd like to talk about a new agreement, a proper one with compensation. I crossed my arms. You'll need to submit it in writing. We're also looking to dissolve the current board. Clean slate. New oversight, we didn't know what was being submitted. You all signed the annual reports. He swallowed hard. We were misled. You were complicit. He nodded once, ashamed. We want to make it right. I handed him a printed copy of the new terms I drafted. Monthly compensation for road access. Maintenance fees. A clause requiring written notice of any event within 300 feet of my property. And a strict boundary map signed by the county. He took it with trembling fingers. If you agree, I said, I'll consider reopening the gate. But only once the DA completes the investigation. Until then, you're on foot. Leonard didn't argue. As he walked away, I saw something strange. A group of residents standing at the edge of the road, watching everything. One of them stepped forward, an older woman with silver hair and a cane. Mr. Naylor, she called. Yes, thank you. We were never okay with what they did. We just didn't know how to stop it. That's what fences are for, I said. To remind people where the line is. She smiled faintly and turned away. That night, I locked the gate again. Not out of spite, but out of principle. For years, they assumed the road was theirs because no one told them otherwise. Now they knew better. And I wasn't just the guy who lived at the top of the hill anymore, I was the one who owned it. The week that followed was the kind of slow burn you only see when a system starts unraveling from the inside. I didn't attend the emergency HOA meeting held at the community pool house, mostly because it had been locked down by zoning inspectors, and they were forced to set up folding chairs in the parking lot like a yard sale of shame. My neighbor from 2 lots over, a retired firefighter named Reuben, filled me in later that night. "They're scrambling," he told me as he set a worn thermos on my porch railing. "Half the boards resigned already, and the county's breathing down their necks about financial disclosures." I nodded. "You think they'll actually fix it?" "Not unless they're forced to. But you did more in 3 days than the rest of us managed in 3 years. That stuck with me not because it flattered my ego, but because of what it implied. Deborah and her inner circle hadn't just presumed control, they'd kept it by exhausting anyone who questioned them. Most people just wanted peace and quiet. Deborah made that expensive. That peace finally shattered 3 days later when an unmarked van arrived at the Ridgeview HOA treasurer's home. 2 investigators stepped out wearing jackets marked with the State Financial Crimes Unit. This wasn't about zoning anymore. This was about money. Turns out, the fake parcel map wasn't just used for events. It had been submitted in an annual expenditure report to justify renovations and landscaping contracts that never actually happened. Over $70,000 had been moved from the HOA's reserve fund to a shell company registered under the name of Deborah's brother-in-law. That same afternoon, Deborah was taken into custody. I watched from the hilltop as the cruiser pulled away. No sirens, no drama, just a quiet departure followed by stunned silence across the neighborhood. Later that evening, Leonard returned to my property, this time with a woman I hadn't met before. She was composed, late 40s, clipboard in hand, and wearing a navy windbreaker that reads State Compliance Auditor. "This is Marla Chen," Leonard said, his voice quieter than usual. "She's been assigned to oversee the HOA audit." Marla extended a hand. "Mr. Naylor, I've reviewed your documentation. I'd like to thank you for bringing this to light." Had that fraudulent map remained unchallenged, the financial misrepresentation could have escalated into a full-scale embezzlement case. "You're saying it wasn't already," she gave a tight nod. "It is now." Leonard shifted his weight. We'd still like to renegotiate access, something formal. Legal, transparent, and we're prepared to meet your terms." I stepped aside and motioned them toward the porch. We sat, and Marla scanned my revised access agreement, one that included a monthly maintenance stipend, a usage cap, and a clause requiring quarterly inspection of the road funded by the HOA. Leonard signed without hesitation. "There's one more thing," I said, folding the papers. "The HOA has to send written notification to every Ridgeview resident, clearly stating that the road and the land around it are private property. No exceptions. No future misinterpretations." Marla nodded. "I'll oversee the distribution myself." It was done. By the following weekend, the gate was reopened, this time with an electronic system tied to a fob key that I controlled. Each resident would need one to enter. Emergency services had their own override pass. The bounce house, the folding chairs, the U-Haul parties, those were gone. In their place was silence and respect. But the final twist came a week later, during a zoning committee hearing I attended out of curiosity. I sat in the back, arms folded, as a man in a blazer and tie presented a proposal from the interim Ridgeview board to build a proper community lot, this time on land they actually owned. The motion passed unanimously, and a modest budget was approved from remaining HOA funds. Then, unexpectedly, the committee chair gestured to me. "Mr. Naylor, would you mind stepping forward?" I stood, wary. "You're the complainant from the Ridgeview case. We'd like to thank you for protecting your property rights and holding this board accountable." Your documentation has been instrumental in exposing a systemic abuse of jurisdiction. I gave a small nod. I wasn't trying to make a point, I just wanted them off my lawn. That got a few laughs, but the chair wasn't done. As a result of your diligence, the committee has voted to amend the municipal review process. Going forward, all HOA zoning requests must include verified proof of ownership and a signed affidavit from affected property owners. You may have just changed how this city handles HOAs. I didn't smile, didn't gloat. I simply returned to my seat and watched the rest of the session unfold. By the time I got home, Ruben was already waiting with 2 lawn chairs and a 6-pack of whatever discount brand he preferred that week. He raised a can as I approached. "You know," he said, cracking the tab, "if they ever try anything again, they'll have to go through a lot more red tape." "They already did," I replied, lowering myself into the chair, "and it strangled them." The summer rolled on. The grass grew back. The oil stains faded. A new HOA board was elected, this one composed of actual residents, not power-hungry opportunists. They kept to themselves and they kept off my lawn, but the best part, the gate stayed right where it was. Quiet, dignified, and locked by default, not to keep people out. Just to remind them whose hill this really was.